Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Faerie Conclave. This is episode number 100. I'm your host, Alec. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm super duper excited to have a very, very special guest on for episode 100. It's Brian, also known as the professor of Tellurian Community College. How are you doing today, Brian?
Oh, hello, Alec. Thank you so much for having me on. I am indeed the professor, also known as Brian, or perhaps it's the other way. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm so excited that you have invited me to be here for your 100th episode. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Quite the milestone. That's a real big milestone. I hope you're proud.
Thank you. Yes. No, I definitely am. I appreciate you saying that, too. I think it goes by so fast. I just had no idea how many of these I made, and then all of a sudden there are 100 of them, apparently.
That's wild. That's wild. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I am super excited to have you on, especially after you were kind enough to give me the honor of letting me be a guest on some of your Magic content as well, which I kind of wanted to kick things off with a question for you about that. So I was on an episode of Shuffle Up and Play where I played Budget Commander with Joey and you and Tomer. And it was a blast, and it was amazing to see the kind of like behind the scenes of how Shuffle Up and Play gets made. Yeah, I'm even more of a fan of it now than I was before, and I already was a pretty big fan. So yeah,
that's my secret plan. If I just invite as many people on as possible, that's how I grow the fan base. It's just we're converting people over one fan at a time. So that was my secret plan all along.
I love it. Yeah, no, definitely made a huge fan out of me. Yeah, and so, I wanted to ask you, after the huge success of the Kickstarter funding season 2 of Shuffle Up and Play, like funded in less than a day, I'm pretty sure. And then you also hit all of your like preset milestones way quickly. Yeah, how does it feel to have not just me as a fan, but also, enough people out there to do that?
It's overwhelming, it's very humbling in a lot of ways. I do oftentimes have a little bit of a psychology where I don't feel like I'm that worthy or deserving of this level of love and support, but I'm grateful for it nonetheless. I don't do the thing. There's the deep psychological playbook. I don't do the thing where I insist to myself it isn't real. I know it's real. I just can't believe it, and I can't. It sometimes it feels like I'm watching it happen to me, but that I'm also standing kind of outside my body watching it. So it's just very overwhelming. And I think of the idea of indebtedness and gratitude very heavily. And I feel that I have to pay back what's been paid to me, not just financially, of course, but spiritually, emotionally, all of those things. So I owe a great debt to this community, and it's my job with season 2, with every episode that comes out. With the episode, it's a Saturday. The reason I was free for this is I'm in the office working, getting a video done for Monday, and I'm just looking to pay that back all the time because it's changed my life. So I hope one day I've earned it.
I love that. Yeah, no, I definitely think it's very well deserved, and that you have already earned it. But I can totally understand the how it feels different from your side. But I think
there's an episode of Northern Exposure I think of where Marilyn makes Dr. Fleischman a gift, and he'd been a total jerk in that episode, like most episodes, but at the end when she gives him the gift, he says, "I don't deserve this," and she says, "You will." And I always think of that a lot, where it's like whenever I feel I don't deserve something, I think, well, I will one day. I will. I'm gonna make it so that I will. And that's, I think of that scene from a show probably no one remembers or has heard of unless you're in your 40s. Sorry, but there you go.
I love it. Yeah, no, definitely a good thing to hold on to, especially as a someone, a content creator, which is a difficult thing to be. So
yeah. That's for sure.
Okay, yeah. Well, anyway, I kind of was excited to talk about that a little bit at the top, but I'm super looking forward to getting into asking you a bunch of questions about one of your favorite decks. And I'm also very excited because I do a lot of Commander deck interviews on the show, which I love to do, but I'm really excited today to talk to you about a deck that is not a Commander deck. It's from another format. So
yeah, not just another format, but another era. In honor of your 100th episode, I went and I selected a deck that no one can play currently because it's from a standard that is long gone. It's all irrelevant in every conceivable way. So there you go. Happy 100. Happy 100.
Hooray.
But you said to me when you said select a deck, and I said, well, what should I be thinking about when I look through my collection to select a deck? I immediately just assumed you must mean Commander, because what else is there these days? But as you described it, and you let me know that it doesn't have to be a Commander deck, I said, there's a deck that I have a very, very strong emotional attachment to and history with that I would love to bring on and talk about. And so, let's talk about Raphael Levy's Burial Rites, French Rites deck from 2000 and humumumum. I think this is going back to 2012 standard, M12 standard, when original Innistrad came out and New Phyrexia was still in the block. This is New Phyrexia and original Innistrad standard, and it was it's I have it in front of me right here. People at home can't see, but I keep it assembled because it's my favorite deck, and even though I can't play it anymore, I still love it. I still think of it.
Yeah, no, I think this is perfect for episode 100 for a couple of reasons. One being that's also the exact same time period that I started playing Magic in the first place.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of horror stuff, and Innistrad, I saw that on the shelves in a Target when that set came out, and that's just, I never looked back ever since then. So yeah, I love that, and yeah, I think it'll be a perfect deck to talk about. Really quick before we get into the interview questions I have for you, at the beginning of the episode, I always shout out a random patron from the Conclave Mentor patron level. And today I want to do a shout out to HB for supporting me there. So thank you very much, HB. I appreciate it very, very much.
Is that HB or HP?
B.
HB. Awesome.
Yes, as in boy.
Thank you. Oh boy. Thank you for your support, HB.
Yes. Thank you very much. Sweet. Okay. Yeah. Let's get into the interview for this deck, which I'm so stoked for. So yeah, you kind of hinted at it a little bit already, but my first question is, just introduce us to the deck and what it inspired you to kind of build it and keep it in the first place.
Well, this was my first level up deck. This was the first time that I went from being a kind of casual who doesn't understand things such as strategy or just next level play into glimpsing that world and experiencing it for myself. What had happened was I had played Magic the Gathering in high school. And back then, as far as I was concerned, the apotheosis of Magic the Gathering gameplay was using a Netling Imp combined with a Royal Assassin to destroy any creature of my opponent's. My friend and I thought we had cracked the game, solved literally the game of Magic the Gathering with the Netling Imp Royal Assassin combo. Naturally, we then quit the game, sold all our cards, and I went about my life for 20 or so years. At which point I was brought back into the game, and I started buying cards and buying dual decks and playing at my local game store. And I went into every Friday Night Magic, and I played with a new friend of mine, and he also was a casual, and we just did the whole play with cards I own routine. We understood standard, and we did have standard decks, and my standard deck was mono red, and his was green elves or something like that, or green ramp, very basic stuff. And I was reading the Magic the Gathering Salvation message boards, and I saw these threads about a Magic event that had taken place, and people were going on and on about how someone had shown up with a 4 or 5 color reanimator deck. And I just saw those and they were going on and on, and it worked. It worked great. The mana base made it work. This is amazing. And I was like, that sounds cool. I looked up the deck list and I thought, I have no idea how this deck works. I looked at these cards and I'm like, what are you doing with this deck? I just didn't understand. It looked like a deck that it didn't really make sense to me. And I was talking to my friend about it at lunch. And we would get lunch every other day. And he said, oh, let me see the list. So the next day he goes over, he says, you remember that deck? I said, yeah. He said, I printed it out. Here it is. He just held up a deck. He had printed out all the cards. And he said, let's see how it works. And so I took my mono red deck and he was figuring it out in the moment. He was flipping over cards and being like, oh, I see. Okay, the mulch puts that in my graveyard and then this flashes it back. And he got it, and he saw it, and he won. And having never played it before, and it was such an it's like a pro level deck against my just red cards in a deck. And so then we traded decks, and I played it, and I said I have never had so much fun with like the puzzle that I was solving and everything. And I was like, I need to put this deck together. And I very slowly, it took me time because the cards were expensive, but I slowly built it, put it together. And I played it until it rotated out, and I had such great experiences with it. It was really where I had next level experiences with this deck because I would also learn my opponent's decks through it. So I'm sitting there playing this, and then someone else is playing with, whatever their deck was, Delver or Huntmaster, and on and on. And I would learn their deck through seeing them play it against me. And it was just like, in many ways, my entryway into this bigger, larger world of Magic.
I love that. Yeah, I think a couple of things you said there are some of the things that I just love so much about Magic. And like solving the puzzle is a big one. I think the first time I started taking a deck from kind of like what you said, whatever cards we just happened to grab from booster packs at the store. Right. And actually, putting synergies together and putting different cards together to make them do things greater than they would separately, and kind of putting it together as a puzzle is definitely where the game latched onto me at first. So I really like that about it, and I think that this deck has a lot of very cool and very special things about it that if I were looking at this early on in my Magic career, I would have no idea how any of it works. So I do love that you were able to make proxies basically and just kind of like play it to figure out what was going on with it.
Yeah, and as it rotated out, as Scars rotated out, I still wanted to play it, and so I kept the Innistrad parts of it, and I had to figure out how I could keep playing this deck with what was left after Scars rotated out of Standard. And that was another next level moment for me, because I look at this list and the big card to get out is Elish Norn, and maybe an Inferno Titan or a Wormcoil Engine. And those are your big things that you're going for. You can bring out some Lingering Souls, and then you bring Elish Norn out, and you've got she makes them more powerful and wipes off your opponent's creatures, and that's really great. Or Wormcoil Engine, Inferno Titan, self-explanatory. But when M12 rotated out and Scars of New Phyrexia, or Scars of Mirrodin rotated out, then it's like, well, I still had Lingering Souls, and I still had Unburial Rites, and I still had Mulch, and I lost some of the fast lands, but I got other ways I could build the mana base, and I still had Llanowar Elves and Avacyn's Pilgrims, so a lot of the deck was still there. So I had to sit and I had to think to myself, all right, I still had Faithless Looting. You still had so much of what we would call the shell of the deck. I just need to replace these big bads. So I tried things. I stuck Avacyn in there. I'm like, fine, I'll reanimate Avacyn, but that doesn't do you that much good in the same way Elish Norn did, because like Avacyn didn't do it. Grizzlebrand did me some good. But then I started getting creative, and I did silly things. I put Stormtide Leviathan in there in place of Inferno Titan, and got my opponents my store. Shout out to Anime Imports. Am I allowed to plug my old LGS on your show? Totally. Shout out. It's still there. It's a great place. I go back. The owner's amazing. The community there is amazing. Shout out to Anime Imports in Pacifica, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. Wonderful, welcoming place and ample parking. But like the crew there, at least in my day, was a bit hardcore. Like it was a lot of grinders in there, and a lot of like just people who would go down to a GP and they'd make day 2, and they were tough crowd, wonderful people, but they knew their stuff. So I'm sitting there, I reanimate my Stormtide Leviathan, and they'd just be like, "What the heck are you doing, Brian?" Like, but then it's like, all right, cool. I attack with it, and it was hilarious. It didn't work as well as having my Worm Coil or my Elish Norn, but it worked. It did its thing, and then it just got to a point where the deck was just couldn't do it anymore. It just didn't have it, and then Innistrad rotated out, and that was the end of it. And there it went. But I got to play it on a shuffle up and play where I recreated the Pro Tour from Dark Ascension, where Raphael Levy did not make top 8 due to draft, not due to this deck. And so I recreated the top 8, but I got to bring Raphael Levy's deck to play against Kibler and Crew's decks that were in that, and not Kibler on that episode, but it was fun. I got to introduce my friends to those decks, and then it was fun too because Raphael Levy actually tweeted that he saw the like I was doing the social media push, and so of course I said I'm playing his deck, and he's like, "Whoa, that's from like 2012. I loved that deck," and he was like, "This is cool," and he said, "I played that deck long after I should have stopped playing it," and I was like, "Me too." It was wonderful little moment there.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to say, if we hadn't brought it up at some point, that I will definitely have a link to that episode so you can see the deck in action, because it was a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, and I do like a lot that during the rotation you were able to kind of take a list that somebody else had created that you loved, but it gave you kind of like the opportunity to customize it for yourself and try out new things like Stormtide Leviathan and stuff.
Well, that's like how you learn. I am identifying, we lose these pieces, we gain these pieces, and you learn that, and that's a neat thing. I think that's a little more evident in 60 card decks, whereas in Commander, like what's one Elish Norn, in a deck where you've got all kinds of stuff in there. Maybe for some decks, maybe if that's your commander, but in 60 card decks, especially, I think there's a different sort of blueprint or skeleton to them, and ways to understand, that's what that organ does. I just went from blueprint to skeleton to anatomy. I'm jumping all over the place here, but that's what the gallbladder does in the skeleton that you have a blueprint of,
Yep, exactly. It's true. This is kind of a bonus question, I guess, but when I was doing some research before the episode into this deck, I did see a couple threads of people recently trying to kind of revive it for historic in Arena. Is that something you've looked into at all, trying to get some of the...
Just say the word. I haven't played Arena in a long time. I stopped playing Arena, right? I got very... when it went in the weird alchemy direction and historic changed, and then I would have come back if they had put Pioneer on, but it's Pioneer, and so it's not quite Pioneer, and that'll get me back. Like, I'm not like anti-Arena, but I just fell off of it because it just was going in such a different direction where I want more of that 1-to-1 to paper, and it just started to feel like it's Magic, with different than paper, except for Standard, I guess, but I don't play Standard. So yeah.
Totally understand. Yeah.
No, that'd get me back on Arena, Watsy. Come on, Arena devs. Get me back on Arena. Let me go live in Grandpa Past, and there we go.
Yeah, no, the nostalgia factor definitely is something. Clearly, besides you, there are other people out there who are, posting about it, and this deck specifically trying to bring it back in some way. So yeah, I love to see that. Cool. Okay. So yeah, I think what I'll ask you next is just what is it about this deck that makes you love playing it so much?
I really like there's a kind of, I often feel like there's a blackjack quality to it as you go to put your library into the graveyard, and you're just mulching and going, all right, 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 whatever, and it's kind of fun. You don't know if if you get those hits right, you can unburial on as early as turn 3. And or you Lingering Souls turn 3 and then bring Elish Norn out turn 4. So a deck where you can literally, because of ramp, be bringing a Wormcoil in turn 3 is just so fun, and it's just you're cheating. You're breaking the tempo of Magic, which is what all good decks do. Is it's just like, okay, the basic back and forth is I play a land, you play a land, I play a spell, you play a spell, and then it's like, cool. Now it's my turn. I'll play something I shouldn't be able to play for 3 more turns. I'm ahead of you by a lot. And that is very fun and exciting. It doesn't hurt that cards that I really loved, like Wormcoil Engine was one of the cards that got me back into Magic when my friend was getting me back in, and I was looking at cards. I saw Wormcoil and I thought of a Zelda monster from like, Link to the Past, where, it's like, come on, you're in the labyrinth, you're fighting a Wormcoil Engine in Zelda, and when you beat it, it splits into 2 smaller portions. It's a Zelda monster, and it's a Magic card. I love it. It just feels like that. It's got such flavor, and Wormcoil Engine is one of my favorite cards for that reason. It just feels like that to me. And so the whole deck just really had that feeling. But more than that, I guess it really is that emotional attachment, because I just remember sitting in Oakland at Sparky's Burgers with my friend, eating some cheeseburgers and curly fries and a lemonade, and playing Magic on a placemat, and with these Xeroxed cards and my mono red deck, and feeling like this wonderful friendship and kinship, and also just learning and something new about the game. So it's all wrapped up in that. It's all that good stuff.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think the kind of like context that you have around the time period, just generally where you're at in your life when you're playing a deck like this, and being able to kind of revisit that and play the deck again in the future and remember all those things is really special. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah,
I think now's a good chance to get into exactly kind of how this deck operates a little bit more. So yeah, can you kind of talk us through what your goals are when you play this deck, and just kind of how it goes?
Well, I'm no Raphael Levy, but basically what the deck looks to do is it's got cards like Faithless Looting, Mulch. Oh, and another thing was Mulch was where I learned for the first time. So Mulch was reprinted in Innistrad, and Mulch had previously been in an older set, and the old Mulch art is amazing. It's this Rebecca Gay art, and I love Rebecca Gay. And I had looked, and I saw that art, and I was like asking the owner of my local game store, and I was like, so like if I were to buy those old cards with the old art, could I play them in my deck at Friday Night Magic in place of the new ones? And he's like, yeah, you could. I'm like, is that allowed? And he's like, yeah. And I loved that. And so I was playing with the old Mulch, but it's got these cards like Faithless Looting and Mulch, and they let you dump into your graveyard. And the goal is you get out anything from a Birds of Paradise to a Avacyn's Pilgrim to I don't think the official list goes for Llanowar elves, but that was what I started doing when I lost. I think Birds went away with M12, something like that. But Mana Dorks, you get those out, you do some ramp, you're going to use turns 1 and 2 and possibly 3 to just be dumping into your graveyard. And the Mulch really helps with mana fixing, because you pull all lands, just all of them, even non-basics, into your hand. Scars of Mirrodin had fast lands. And what you hope to do is just put an Elish Norn, a Wormcoil Engine, or an Inferno Titan in the graveyard, and then you've got this lovely card called Unburial Rites. And Unburial Rites can be hard cast from your hand for 5, or for 4 mana, one of which being white, you can flash it back, and you get to return target creature from the graveyard to the battlefield. Now, if you've got that Mana Dork out turn 1, that means you can, on turn 3, have 4 mana available. We call that ramp. And and then on turn 3, if you turn 1 Mana Dork, turn 2 Mulch. Mulch puts Wormcoil or Elish into the graveyard. And then turn 3, Unburial Rites, and GG. It's very hard to handle. Now, the other cool thing is it's got support cards like Lingering Souls, and Lingering Souls has flashback. So if Lingering Souls gets dumped into your graveyard instead of Elish Norn, or in addition to Elish Norn, then you can go ahead and pay just 1 and a black. And this is where the 5 color comes in as you need. I think this version's 4 color. It doesn't have blue. There's a 5 color version. But you can then put 2 1/1 flying spirit tokens into play, or you can cast Lingering Souls and then flash it back, and then bring out Elish Norn, and Elish Norn will make those spirits 3/3 flyers, and also cut down and decimate your opponent. There's all these different lines of attack, and it's a lot of fun. It's really good.
Nice. Yeah, I really like how I've always been a fan of just kind of reanimator strategies in general, and this deck does do something that is really cool to see that you can't do in Commander, which is play off-color like finishers. Because you don't actually need to pay whatever, like the blue to cast Jin Cataxius or something like that. Right. Yeah, you can cheat it out with other things, which, is something I really enjoy about formats that don't have those color restrictions.
Yes, absolutely. Let's check out Canadian Highlander. You can do that there.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. So I don't know if the physical deck that you have has this, but I love this single copy of Thrun the Last Troll. Can we talk about that one? What is this?
Well, that's card? in the sideboard. And Thrun the Last Troll. What are you going to do against Thrun? You can't do anything against Thrun. It can't be countered. It can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control, and you can regenerate it. So what are you going to do about Thrun? Now, I'll be honest with you. I do not remember what this is specifically an answer to in the meta from 2000 and but all I know is this: when Thrun hits the board, what are you gonna do? You can't do anything. You just can't do anything.
Unkillable 4/4. It's
it's Thrun. It's you can't do it. You can't do it.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so thank you so much for walking us through the deck. I think it's really cool, and it's such a great like view into that era of Magic as well.
It was a good era. I think that in a lot of ways, Scars into Innistrad was part of this golden age, and I know that it's very easy to say to everybody, oh, whatever, your era of Magic is of course the golden age, but I do think that this was an era where a lot of people got back into the game. Standard was at a very popular level. It's where a lot of people were playing Standard and interested in Standard. Modern was emerging. It had just replaced Extended. And I think that a lot of today, in many ways, is riding off of what the next several years did in terms of creating this really great time period in Magic, from those sets, from Zendikar had just come out into Mirrodin, Scars of Mirrodin, New Phyrexia, Innistrad, into Return to Ravnica, into original Theros. It was a very good time, I think. And I think that a lot of stuff of today shoots back to that era and doesn't quite recapture it, especially since the competitive scene has changed. Standard just isn't played in paper hardly at all anymore. Friday Night Magic has morphed, and so it's very interesting to think back to those days.
Yeah, it's true. I bet there are a lot of lessons that can be taken and probably have been from from Magic at that era. But yeah, I do recall, and I was very new, so I was getting into it, but the just kind of like hype and excitement around the game store scene because of Standard and Modern and all of the options that those formats had to offer was at a very, very high point, I think. As far as this deck goes, does it have any weaknesses that you'd like to talk about? when you're playing
Yeah,
it.
piloting weakness. There was one time. There was one time where I had replaced the Elish Norns and Worm Coils with Grizzlebrand, and I was getting my main threats removed too easily. And so I think it was, oh gosh, it was one of those white spells of the era that was still in standard, and I think it was, I want to say like Brave the Elements, or if not that, something along those lines. And it was an instant. It's a white or a white and a colorless, I don't know, and it just basically gives you protection. And I was starting to have a lot of good luck with that card with Grizzlebrand, because Grizzlebrand could just draw cards. And so the thing was what I would do is I would resolve Grizzlebrand, and I'd draw cards until I got the protection spell, play the protection spell on Grizzlebrand, and then swing him through. He'd get the life link. He would repay for whatever life I paid. And again, it's just like GG. Or I would swing through if it wasn't an issue, and I'd hold up the pride. Then that's how I learned to start holding up. Because at some games I would play the Brave the Elements, and then it was like too soon. Then they'd remove it, and so I'd wait for them to try and remove it or something. And I would definitely say that the weakness that I experienced was just I would actually do what the deck needed to do and reanimate the creature I wanted, and then it would just get picked off. So that was something I had a problem with a lot in the day. And it's a very linear deck in some ways. You can be going for a certain type of target, like maybe you want to intentionally get your Elish Norn against certain opponents versus your Worm Coil against others, but you are still not interacting as much. And the base version that I have here, the unaltered version, it's like doesn't really have removal or anything I can do to interact too much besides Inferno Titan if it resolves with my opponent. So it's a very straightforward linear deck that can be disrupted kind of easily.
That makes sense too. There are a lot of different pieces that you need that take up quite a bit of the deck's list. So yeah, just not enough room to add extra removal or whatever else is going on.
Yeah. Or I just think maybe it didn't. I played around with everything at one point or another. I played around with everything in it at one point or another, for sure.
I love that. So yeah, I mean, we've talked about like a lot of the different cards in the deck and their purposes. I guess kind of a question I have along those lines is, are there core cards in the deck, like MVP cards, that if they got reprinted or if similar cards came out, is there a way we could revive this deck, or at least its kind of strategy? Are there?
Well, I don't know what the hell standard even looks like today, really. But the core card is the Unburial Rites. The idea being that you've got the flashback on it. And so it isn't just that you've got a good reanimation spell, but the idea is that you can dump Unburial Rites into your graveyard while you're mulching, while you're, faithless looting, whatever, and flash it back even though it's in your graveyard, or hard cast it and have it again. So the main thing is you need to have Unburial Rites be legal. The problem is that when you get into formats like Modern or Legacy, there's better reanimation spells. So you don't need Unburial Rites. Like, there's no Unburial Rites deck that I've ever heard of anyway. Write in if there is, but there's not really an Unburial Rites deck in Modern because there's better ways to do reanimation. The other thing is that in Modern and Legacy, as far as I've seen, because I looked around trying to see if I could scratch this itch, this is true in Commander in a lot of ways too, is that you're not looking to reanimate targets that are just strong creatures. Like a Worm Coil or a Inferno Titan is strong in Standard. Worm Coil's strong, let's be honest, but like you're usually looking to reanimate something that can combo into a win. Like why reanimate an 8/8 when you can reanimate something that's just going to win the game flat out, especially in a format like even when you get to Commander where it's like that 8/8, I've got 3 opponents. It's scary, but I just did a whole stunt to get something that, what we really want are effects. What we want are conditions that make it hard for our opponents to catch up with us. Legacy and Modern will usually have some kind of combo piece to just, end the game. And so you don't have that feel of like, we talked about outpacing your opponent in terms of tempo, and that's something I really liked about it. I guess I'm still aggro oriented in my thinking in a lot of ways, but that's I like that. I don't like winning through I put this combo in, I put this combo in, and that's GG unless you got a counterspell. It just feels very like I've cheated myself out of a game. And I don't care if someone does it to me because I just say, cool, good game. But for me, I want to send that Inferno Titan in. I want to send that Worm Coil in. I like that feeling. But it's something that I feel I don't see it a lot in a lot of formats anymore. It feels like it gets very convoluted. It just feels like it's all right. The strategy here is about 3 cards worth of text, and it's going to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And there you go. And I just feel like, all right, cool. Wow. And it just, I feel like I lose my grasp on the game and the pieces. And I like that more tangible feel of the game and its pieces.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's probably exactly why this is such a special deck. It's like that kind of perfect line between like it's very strong in its circumstance and in its era, but it might not if the power level were raised like a little bit, then you're kind of more into that combo-y kind of modern. It's just a little bit faster than this deck can be. Space. Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Okay.
And I mean, that's how I'm like with other things. I mean, I think a lot of people are probably going to joke, "Oh, I'm surprised you didn't pick a Merfolk deck." And I was considering it, but it's a little cliche, so I wanted to do something interesting. But yeah, like what I loved in Modern was Merfolk. And while I'm known as a Merfolk enthusiast and fanatic, where it really traces itself back to is Modern Merfolk from that era. And I liked what that deck did. And people are like, "Oh, here's a Merfolk deck. It wins with a Thassa's Oracle combo." And I'm like, nah, that's not Merfolk. I want, whenever a Merfolk comes into play, Marrow Reedry can tap or untap target permanent. I'm going to tap my opponent's lands. I'm going to untap my Aether Vial, tap the Aether Vial, put another Merfolk into play. That Merfolk creates a synergy with other Merfolk, and then they're going to swing. They're going to have Island Walk. I made one of your lands an island with Spreading Seas. They're swinging in, and I'm doing stuff with pieces on my board, and I loved that deck and the feel of that deck so much. And even current, Modern Merfolk is not quite the same anymore. And so that's this whole trend of Magic just going into, it really doesn't matter the creature's power or toughness. It's just what's written on the front and oftentimes the back of the card.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it might have a Merfolk in it, but it's not.
Right. It's like, but I liked the synergy of of my Merfolk deck much more than just it's a card that wins. And I don't like that win that much. I've got a few decks like that. My Teysa deck has got it wins if I get a combo off, but it's not my favorite way to play.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these what these have in common that I see you really enjoying are just having creatures on the board and like a big board presence. And
I like that.
Yeah, being able to put those together, which is true. A lot of creatures lately they act more like spells, and once they actually are on the board, they don't really matter anymore.
Yeah.
So I enjoy actually, having a board state that puts something cool together.
That's me.
For this deck, as we kind of wrap up talking about the cards in it, are there any pet cards in this deck that you've played at one point or another that you just couldn't resist?
That's Stormtide Leviathan. I thought that was so clever because that was me really like looking at Avacyn and Griselbrand is called who are the big mythics of Innistrad, we'll run them. And like I said, Avacyn didn't quite do it because it was like it's indestructible and my permanents are indestructible, but that doesn't really, nobody's destroying my permanents, and Avacyn would just get exiled if I recall correctly, and so that didn't really do much. Griselbrand had more to it, but Stormtide was me understanding, okay, Elish is creating this situation, and Stormtide, it shuts off my opponents from being able to attack unless they've got, Island Walk. And Stormtide can't be, it's just, it made it such a cool condition, and it's just this outrageous price. The biggest problem I encountered was I could never hard cast it. It's just like I would either have to get it in the graveyard or die. And what happened was I died a lot. But that was, I thought I was so damn clever putting Stormtide Leviathan in that Unburial Rites deck when New Phyrexia rotated out. That was my baby. Stormtide Leviathan Reanimator.
I love it. Yeah, I have a strong affinity for Stormtide Leviathan as well. I got it in a booster pack around that time or something.
Yeah,
and it just,
I bet you went, whoa, oh my, no one's ever going to be able to beat me with this.
Literally, the 2 times I was actually able to cast it because I, didn't have enough lands or whatever.
Right.
Totally unbeatable. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Doomblade, there you go. And that's what it was like for me. Doomblade.
Yep, exactly. If it stuck around for a turn, there's no coming back. But otherwise,
right.
It's true. Sweet. Okay. Well, so my next question for you is: do you have a favorite in-game moment or memory that you think about that you had while you were playing this deck?
Let's see. I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself. Obviously, the moment of me and my friends sitting at lunch and figuring it out is the big moment. I remember, I guess, not to plug Shuffle Up and Play, but in getting to bring it back out with Tappy and Princess and play it, it was pretty funny because I got mana screwed when we played it. And I didn't get to. I lost because I got mana screwed, and I adhere very strictly to the rules of we're gonna just have that experience be that experience. And it was very funny too because Tappy and Princess, I love them, and we're very good friends. But also, as very good friends are one to do, they were giving me endless, just cackling grief at the fact that I was getting mana screwed, and Princess had never played her deck before and was just trouncing me. And that was it. That was game over. The show's over. And we were recording the end of it where we sit in the chair and we do kind of the post-game smack talk. And I started trying to do instead of smack talk, like a sentimental thing where I said, I still got to play with my friends. That's what Magic's about. And I just realized it in the moment. And I literally just said, hey, do y'all want to play one more round? I didn't get to play. Oh, you know what? I'm telling it wrong. Sorry. It was that I had not gotten to play Princess. I had only played Tappy because she had stayed in the chair. So I said, hey, do you want to just play one more round? And even though Tappy won and she's the winner, me and Princess will just get a game because we both lost. That's what it was. Princess had lost against that. And they were like, yeah, why not? And we sat down and we played. And the deck got to do what it did, and it was fun. And then I'm just like, I looked around at my friends, and it wasn't like a joke, like a act or anything. I said, y'all want to just take some decks down and get to there's a place that does pizza and chicken wings and beer. Tappy's a big beer drinker, and I was just like there's an ale house that's got great pizza and chicken wings. Y'all want to just go play Magic there? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And we all just start chanting, pizza, chicken wings, beer, pizza, Magic. And it was just such what the game's about to me. So I guess that closing moment is the other one, and that it was like returning, I guess, to the roots of just playing games over lunch and with your friends. And that's really what it's about,
Yeah, exactly. That is what it's all about. And it's really cool to see that this deck and decks like it have kind of facilitated that for many years, and up until even recently. So
yeah,
I think that's cool.
Magic does that. Magic will do that in any format, not just this deck, not just standard or commander or legacy or pre-modern or Canadian Highlander or tiny leaders, but Magic does that, and I think that's what's great about Magic. It's the gathering.
Yes, totally agreed. Yeah, and there's something really special about just not taking it too seriously, and you've got a pizza on the table with your deck, and and it's just good vibes. That's awesome.
Very good vibes.
Okay, so we've come to our final question that I have for you, which I think this one is kind of funny in this context, but I always like to wrap things up by saying, if anyone out there is interested in this deck, and wants to they're like looking to get advice on how to play it, what is something that you would say to people?
Oh, I don't know. Like go follow Raphael Levy on Twitter. I think he actually did a series on his YouTube channel where he was playing his old decks and recreating some GPs or something to that effect. Other than that, invent a time machine and go back in time to M12, Innistrad, Scars of Mirrodin block, and just stay there. Let's just stay in Scars Innistrad block. That was the days. M12, baby. Ooh. Actually, M11 because it had Lightning Bolt. But, now we're mixing and matching.
I totally agree. I think if I could go back in time with kind of the much more advanced Magic knowledge I have these days, I think it would be a really fun time to participate in. So
yes, it was good times.
Yeah.
But time must go forward too. We must go forward. Must go on.
We
must return to Ravnica.
Exactly. It's coming up. Awesome. Sweet. Well, this has been such a pleasure and a blast. Thank you so much, Brian, for letting me ask you a whole bunch of questions on a Saturday about one of your favorite decks.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real honor, and congratulations again on 100 episodes.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, so I'll of course have links to all of your stuff, and also the episode of Shuffle Up and Play where this deck was featured. But yeah,
and the one with yourself. Make sure you link that as well.
Yes, yeah, that is true. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. If you want to see me play some budget Commander, we had a blast, and I think you can tell by how much smiling there was in that video that we had a really good time. So yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah. What do you have coming up that you'd like to kind of plug or shout out as we wrap things up?
When do you think this episode is going to air?
Ooh, great question. So I have a couple episodes before I actually hit 100, so it'll be probably about a month from now.
About a month from now, I would say that we've probably had a couple cool Commander episodes go up, but since Shuffle Up and Play is not entirely Commander, you're probably right around the time, if it hasn't aired, it will be airing soon, is a very interesting Legacy episode of Shuffle Up and Play, as well as a paper Power Cube draft and gameplay episode. So we've got great Commander episodes, but we also like to do things in other formats. And so we're going to have a really cool Legacy episode. And we also drafted a paper Power Vintage Cube. And so you can see me. I won't say what with a Black Lotus.
Okay, I'm very much looking forward to that.
You'll have to tune in. You'll have to tune in and see.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's awesome. I got the chance a couple weeks ago to draft the Vintage Cube that's on Magic Online. One of my friends actually printed out the whole thing, and we had a little draft for that. So
fun,
and that was a blast.
Fun.
So
very fun.
Fun. Yeah. Thank you once again, Brian, for coming on and hanging out and talking about Magic.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Of course. Yeah. And as we kind of wrap things up, I love to shout out patrons at my highest tier, the All That Glitters level, of which I have one. I shout them out every episode. And so thank you, Jeff, for being a patron there.
Yeah. Good stuff, Jeff. All that glitters is Jeff.
Yes.
Currently. Come on, someone else needs to glitter besides Jeff. Let's see someone else glitter.
For sure. Yeah. Get in here. It's fun. We have a good time.
Yes.
And you can find my other links and socials and things like that in the episode description. But besides all that, thank you everyone for listening to the episode. And I am so glad you're here. I'm hopefully going to hear from you all soon, and I'll catch you on the next one.